Hello everyone, I'm Samantha Jane Smith.
And I'm Jacob Keynes, and you are listening to the Classical Queer podcast. As part of our live on-site at the Unison Festival, we're going to listen to a bit of the Tone Cluster choir rehearsal, their warm-up. So this group is from Ottawa, and they've flown to Halifax, and they haven't seen each other in this new city, and this is their warm-up before their show at the choir festival. The choir festival has the festival choirs, the three high, mixed, and low voice choirs, but they also have dozens of other choirs that have come from across Canada to come do little mini shows of their own. And so Tone Cluster is going to do a half-hour concert a little later in the week, and this is their rehearsal.
Kick up. Kick up. We kick up. We kick up.
Great. So I think part of it is like, oh my gosh, there's no mask on my face. This is scary. This is what today is all about. So again, one of those great reminders. Hey, Micah. If your brain is like, Deirdre's done something wrong, she has us keep on singing, we shouldn't be singing, just go with it. All right. Okay, let's go from the top one more time.
Kick up. Kick up. We kick up. We kick up. We can't be stopped. They can't catch us. Just like midnight on the clock. It's all hands up before tick goes stop. It's just the dust we kick up. We kick up. We kick up. We kick up. We can't be stopped, they can't catch us. Just like midnight on the clock, it's all hands up before tick goes stop. It's just the dust we kick up, we kick up, we kick up, we kick up. We can't be stopped, they can't catch us. Just like midnight on the clock, it's all hands up before tick goes stop. It's just the dust we kick up, we kick up, we kick up, we kick up, we kick up. Look out, look out, look out. 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 There's a storming on. We kick up. Kick up. Kick up. Kick up. Kick up. Look out above. We can't be stopped. Look out above. We can't be stopped. Look out above. We can't be stopped. They can't catch us. Just like midnight on the clock. It's all hands up before tick goes stop. It's just the dust we kick up. We kick up. We kick up. We kick up. We can't be stopped. They can't catch us. Just like midnight on the clock. It's all hands up before tick goes stop. It's just the dust we kick up. We kick up. We kick up. We kick up. They're coming up. They're coming up. Look out above. Look out above. Look out above. We're coming up. We stop. We can't stop.
Okay, not bad, everyone. Take a seat for a second. Aldous, did you tell that you're dragging a little bit just on the last couple of pages? Okay, so we're dragging a little bit. I would say actually everyone, once we got past the middle ticka section and we went back to singing all in unison, we were just dragging a little bit. Now, this is
what words are they? I don't know what pages are.
When we're all near the end, when we're back to singing in unison, we can't be stopped, they can't catch us, except for a few people are still doing I'm not super worried about it, just a little bit of an FYI.
That's great.
Is there a particular section that is still scary to you?
I.
Is that a yes or a green?
You? Letter I.
Stay seated just because that's the only way you can see me. Okay, can everyone see me when I'm standing here?
Yes.
Yeah, great.
What if I want
Let's
to
do it one more
go?
time and we'll all breathe together.
What if I want to go faster?
I know I should be happy with what I have, where I am now, the slow and simple life I live.
Stuck in the same place, ready for so much more. Knowing that something has to give. What if I want to go faster?
What if I want the unknown world to open? What if I'm ready now to be on my own, to live a life I've outgrown? Ready to make my choice. When will I know that it's time? Know that it's time to time. Even if I had all the answers, what would I want them to be? And if it's up to me to decide, I decide my own fate.
What if I don't have to
Okay, really good, everyone. Can you make sure your eyes are on me on that last measure of page 9? So basses and altos. I just hear a few voices coming in on the word and early. Can we start measure 79? Oh, excellent tuning. Yay.
Oh, what?
Don't say what. Our tuning is usually very good. Hear your notes one more time.
And even though
I'm grateful for all that's happened here. My
go through this a bit sooner. When we turn the page, we should be at a mezzo forte. Okay, so we can get louder sooner. And sopranos, I'm still hearing a few sopranos who are moving when I cue the altos. So see in measure 95, 96, 97, you just have a whole note, you hold it for 4 beats, but I'm cueing, you can look down at the alto part, I'm cueing the altos for beat 4, just make sure that you're not coming in too early. My path, bottom of page 10. How are we feeling?
Good.
It's rocking. Great. I'm jumping all over the place in terms of our order, but could we try A Change Is Gonna Come, please? And Dorian, child.
What is that in the order?
The last one. It's okay. So this is gonna be the fast version. Change is gonna come. I am slightly concerned about fitting all this music into our 30-minute time slot that also includes us getting on having a slower version and keeping it there. All of your phrasing spot on. Thank you. You two sound phenomenal. There will be an actual microphone for you to sing into. As part of the sound check. You do not need to project over 1,000 people or 1,000 seats. And I also don't think there will be 1,000 people at our concert block. So
You can hope.
cool.
No, it's going to be 2,000.
Scared. Good. Coffee calling, please.
So we just heard some of the Tone Cluster Choir rehearsal, and now we're going to speak with their conductor, Deirdre Kellerman, who is an old friend of mine. We worked together in Ottawa many years ago, and actually Deirdre is also from Nova Scotia, where I currently am, and happens to be one of the conductors for the festival choir. So Deirdre is going to conduct the SSAA choir that we're going to hear from later. But this is our chat. This is our moment to reconnect, and it's a wonderful moment because I haven't seen Deirdre in person in probably 7 or 8 years. And a lot has changed in both of our lives, and we get this moment to chat and catch up. And so this is my chat with Deirdre Kellerman in Halifax at the Unison Song Festival 2023. First thing we always can start with is give us a brief primer on who you are, what you do, and I tend to say it can be like as music-y, academic-y as you like, or completely not related to those things at all. But welcome, Deirdre Kellerman.
Thank you. Yeah, I am a conductor, singer, music educator, all of the puzzle pieces that go into being a musician, and have found a bit of a niche, a bit of a home within the intersections of music and queer identity and queer politics, and exploring what it means to go beyond quote unquote safe spaces and community and go a little bit past those words, those terms, and actually try to build it.
And so I should say we are chatting at the Unison Choir Festival, which is a festival here in Canada, and I think it only happens once every 4 years. Is that right? So it just happened to skirt COVID, like just timeline-wise, I suppose. But it's a festival for queer choirs and from across Canada to come. And so we are in I guess this is a conference room, I suppose. Amidst about 1,000 other queer singers who have joined us. So certainly your home base, and you're here with your choir Tone Cluster.
With Tone Cluster, yeah, based out of Ottawa, which is so cool to have them here in Halifax and as my hometown, and being surrounded by other queer singers. Like the energy is just mind-boggling to everyone, knowing that they're in community. They look around and they don't know each other's names yet, but they're like, yep, this is home, this is great.
Yeah, and you're also, so you're here with Tone Cluster, and you're conducting one of the festival choirs.
I am. So we have 3 kind of mass choirs. We have an SATB, we have an upper voice SSAA, and a lower voice TTBB. I'm conducting the upper voice. That's kind of another part of my choir world, is working with treble voices and upper voices. And those are unique. They are optional for the singers here, but we've got a lot of people signed up for them, and they get to sing a variety of rep. But what's really special is that there are 3 brand new commissioned pieces that we get to premiere on Monday that are all about the purge and talking about what happened 40 years ago and how the government treated queer people, losing their positions and benefits and the sweep that happened. And so that's a really powerful thing for me to be involved in that and get to premiere one of these pieces that for a lot of queer people here, it's introducing them to this concept for the first time, this history lesson.
And maybe before we talk about the piece, whose piece are you premiering?
So I get to premiere a piece by Leslie Arden, who primarily works in the musical theater world. So it's really, really cool to be introducing a choral piece through a bit of a musical theater lens. It's very dramatic. There's all that like goosebumpy kind of swells of emotion and music, and it's really well done.
Great.
Yeah.
And so the content or the conversation is from all three are based on The Purge, or is it?
They are, yeah.
Okay. And so, I mean, it's a funny thing. You and I are roughly the same age, but there is this like loss of history that happens, and there is, I mean, for very obvious reasons, and there's a lot to that, but it's important to do these pieces that are based on larger spanning conversations than the here and now, which is also important. But I mean, maybe it's the like historian in me, but like, we arrive at places because we've come through a history, and so it is important to have a through line of these things. And certainly, I mean, I was just in your rehearsal for Tone Cluster. There is an age range there.
It's a very intergenerational choir, and it means that we really do need to make sure we're touching on these historical events, because it helps us engage more respectfully with each other. You know, there's lots of people in the choir who lived through the AIDS crisis. They had friends and partners who died of AIDS in the 80s and 90s, and to the singers who are, you know, in their early 20s, the things that are important to them, things like trans rights, non-binary rights, two-spirit rights, gender expression, like that is such a big piece of their exploration and identity. And the AIDS crisis or the purge, they're things that feel, I think, almost like it was in a movie, like something that happened. And but exploring this through music, and I find it really important to give space to singers to talk about why it's important to them, and it just brings so much more meaning and clarity to everyone in the room. And then on the flip side, also making sure that we are acknowledging the really awful things that are happening within and towards the queer community right now. So there is that kind of constant balance. And in the end, we're all singing and talking about the same thing, really, which is human rights. But yeah, it's really really interesting to be approaching kind of this historical event, but not so long ago. There's people, especially in Ottawa Choir, you know, it's a very government-focused town. A lot of people in Tone Cluster are public servants or were public servants, and were directly affected by this. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good point. I wouldn't have necessarily thought about that kind of Ottawa civil servant connect, but that's very, very true. What, I mean, as somebody who works and has worked for now a number of years in kind of queer exclusive spaces, what is your feeling on, and you said like moving beyond safe spaces, talk to me a bit about that. Like, what does that actually mean on the ground for you?
I read once a great paper about the difference between safe spaces and brave spaces. And that really resonated for me. And that's what I kind of go forward doing. And when you're talking about creating community spaces, it always is going to have conflict. When you add the intergenerational component, there's going to be even more of that. When you are exploring things through an art medium, when there's people there who have sentimental attachment to certain pieces, certain styles, you know, in this year alone, I think that there has been a piece cut from every single program due to conversations that we've had about how it either has affected a group within the choir that I didn't think about when programming it, or something happened in the world. You know, we did a winter holiday concert where I had a Tchaikovsky piece, and that was around the time that the Ukrainian Minister of Culture came out and asked the West not to be programming Russian composers, and but with Tchaikovsky being a gay composer, like that was a really difficult thing for us to do, to decide to pull it from the program. And so we've had to have really challenging conversations, and it requires a lot of bravery, a lot of patience, a lot of active listening, and that can be really hard when you are only together in the same room for 2 hours, 2.5 hours a week. And you also have your deadlines that you need to meet of concerts. And so balancing that, you know, excellence of singing, that artistry excellence, with doing the very hard work that it takes to learn to engage with each other authentically, which means some really hard conversations. And then, you know, throw in grant writing and booking venues and all that kind of fun stuff too. So I think it's very different than a quote unquote regular chamber choir who gets together and they sing their pieces, and if they're lucky, they'll get to discuss the text a little bit or some context. It's a lot more than that. There's a lot more steps to it.
A lot more steps, but you're preaching literally to the choir.
Yeah.
Like, it's so funny. My sentiment is always that these conversations are really difficult often, and they're time consuming, and they often require you to be much more fluid than you maybe initially want to be, as in, like, I've programmed this piece because I believe in this piece and I want to do it, and then I have to let it go, and I have to be okay with letting it go. Yeah. But it always feels to me, and this is, I might have a biased view, but like, we get to engage with music on a completely different level.
Absolutely.
By doing this. And it is difficult. It's really hard. But what comes of it is like a really different understanding of what we're doing and why we're doing it. And that really, for me, translates into the music. And I'm sure, not to put words in your mouth, but I'm assuming it does for you too.
Absolutely. Yeah. One of the things that a lot of choristers have to kind of get used to with me when they first start working with me is I don't buy into the concept of perfection. I will very frequently tell singers to ignore the dynamic markings on the page, to sing how the music makes them feel, how the text makes them feel, and then, lo and behold, it's the dynamics that are on the page. And it's such a lot of, especially the older generation of singers in tone cluster who have spent their life in kind of a more old school approach to music making, to choirs, where it's very detail focused. It's based on the authenticity of the composer, singing, classical masterworks, and what did Bach mean by this particular chord progression and this accidental here, and that's all well and good. But to me, what I feel called to do, what I want to spend my time doing in making music, is making music where the musicians are moved by it, the audience is moved by it. Do I care about, cutoffs and singing the right notes and rhythms? Absolutely. But I quickly tried to get beyond that. And I think it just, the vocal quality that comes out of people who know what they're singing about and they care what they're singing about. It's stunning, really. Like, it's so human.
So how do you choose your repertoire, knowing that that there is so much consideration for context, text, singability, connection? What's your thread for that?
Yeah, I use thematic programming a lot. I got that from some fabulous people that I grew up worked with as a young adult. And that was such a big piece of becoming a choral artist to me, was not just sing a piece, the audience claps, sing a piece, the audience claps, but having that, not even theme, but emotion throughout, so that there is a journey for everyone, that there is a starting point and an ending point. And it's so fun. It is also really challenging because, like you said before, you have to be prepared to give things up. And it's very easy for the conductor-choir relationship, for a conductor to be in a role of a bit of a dictator, just by nature of all the different things you have to think about when programming. But I feel it's really important to leave space for people to share their feedback beyond more than, I like this piece, I didn't like this piece, but this is a piece that was an earworm. That tells me a lot. This was a piece that I was having a really bad day and I self-soothed by singing this piece to myself. This is a piece I sing to my children at bedtime. Like, those are the pieces of feedback that mean that the piece was integrated into their life. And that's my goal, to have that journey throughout the entire program, but to make sure that the music isn't there just because it fits within the program too, that it can live on its own. And it's a skill. It's something that I have been very lucky to work with really great programmers. And it also takes a lot of listening, I think, to the singers to see what is working and what isn't working.
It's funny, in my own programming head, I'm more and more leaning into a conversation like, who is this for?
Yeah.
And I whether it's the best answer for my employers, it's increasingly less for external purposes.
I completely agree.
And it's funny, so this festival is a good case in point of that. There are public concerts, sure. It is largely for the people who are here.
It's for each other.
It really is only for the people who are here.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to have these conversations about repertoire, finding structures, queering, kind of the way that we do things. And for me, that's increasingly less to do with an audience. It's increasingly less to do with public performance. The very act of just doing it together and finding that repertoire together and finding that performance together for ourselves is more interesting more and more to me. But maybe this is again a good example of that this space, this festival, is largely just for people to come sing together. And that is it. That's the thing. That's what we're doing.
It is. This is not a conference where we have tons and tons of professional development sessions. You know, there's the Queer Songbook Orchestra is coming, doing some sessions, doing a concert. You know, there's some wellness sessions, yoga, lots of social stuff. And that's it. There's big choirs from big cities here, but there's also small groups, and this is what, it's for them. It's for them to know that they're not alone. All the hard work they're doing, we see it, we live it too. It's worth it. I was in a round table this afternoon where it was noted, like, there are hard times coming for all of us. Just what's happening south of the border, that's not just going to stay south of the border. It's already here in Canada. And this is an opportunity for us to help. We already are resilient, but to kind of sharpen the swords and strengthen the armor, and remember that we are not alone, that we have community, family, friends, however you want to call it, all across the country, all working there together, being there together. There's just so much power in that. Even if this wasn't specifically for queer choirs, any choral conference, there still is that feeling. And so when you put that other layer of queer identity on top, it's a very powerful thing.
Which reminds me of our first sentiment that we were talking about let's say 40-ish, but you could pick any amount of years ago.
Yeah.
But we had really queer exclusive, queer centered, really separate spaces, because we were forced to, because we didn't have this opportunity to live in the quote-unquote normal world.
Yeah.
But somewhere along the line, when we stopped having queer bars, gay bars, I think there's, because I work and talk about Montreal so much, there's one lesbian bar left.
Yeah.
There is a loss of that protection in that as well, and I'm this just completely speculative, but I wonder if, because as you were quite right, it is coming for us too in Canada, as it's coming for everybody. If we go back to a more queer-centered, take care of our own type structure, I wonder if that's where our strength will kind of be refound. And it doesn't have to look like queer bars necessarily. It can look like queer, song festivals.
Intentionally queer spaces.
Intentionally queer spaces.
Yeah. And I think about this a lot too. Commercialization of drag is such a great example. Love me some RuPaul.
Sure.
But do I feel weird when I'm talking to my straight cis friends and they're like, yes, queen, let's talk about this last night's episode. And it's on one hand, fabulous. On another hand, it feels like someone is stepping into my sacred space and they think they understand, and they have every right to enjoy Drag Race or go to the Pride parades, and wonderful. So glad. And there's something a little bit different in all of us that we can all celebrate together. Great. But my queer identity is more than just my ability to be married to my wife. It's more than, being the conductor of a queer choir. It truly is a sacred piece of my identity that straight cis people will never understand. And I will always feel a little guarded, even if I've known them my entire life. And so there just is something about these intentionally queer spaces that you just kind of let your guard down, and there's still personality politics that come into it for sure. Everyone's human, everyone's different, but I don't have to wait for those moments. Yeah, I don't have to wait for the yes queen moments.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I mean, I will be genuinely very interested to look back where we kind of arrive in the next 10 years, and what these spaces, organizations, communities, however you want to, however broad or not broad, what we kind of end up with. It will be very interesting to me. But I think, it's through hard work, it's through intentionality, it's through like a lot of gumption that we're going to get to the next thing.
Yeah.
But I live in these spaces, and so I'm lucky enough to, it's nothing new to me,
Right.
which is beautiful, but every time I come and watch your rehearsal, anybody's rehearsal, I get to do my own queer rehearsals, it feels so comfortable and lovely.
Yeah.
And I don't have a way to express that to non-queer people.
Exactly.
And that's the important thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I get teary, sorry. Every time. but it's because it's so important. Because
it is.
I can walk in, this is not my choir, this is not my group of people. I know one human in this group. But I immediately feel comfy.
Yeah. And they don't bat an eye.
No, exactly.
Yeah.
And that's a really powerful thing.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. I know you have to run to your...
My pleasure.
I accost people during a conference is the worst possible thing.
It's okay.
You have to run to 800 other things. But thank you very much for talking today and for letting me sit in on your rehearsal and listen. And we're going to listen to some pieces on Monday as well from your choir.
Fabulous.
But thank you very much.
Thanks, Jacob.
We're going to listen to now a couple pieces from the final concert of the festival. And there are 3 choirs, as I've been saying, that convened at the festival. And they're made up from people from a whole bunch of different choirs from all across Canada. And they make up a high voice, SSAA, soprano, soprano, alto, alto. A mixed voice, tenor, alto, bass, soprano, so it's a backwards way of saying it, soprano, alto, tenor, bass, SATB, and then they make up a low voice choir, TTBB, and each one of these choirs met over the week of the festival and had rehearsals and prepared 4 or 5 songs, as well as 3 new commissions that Deirdre talked about briefly in our chat, and they were pieces about the purge that happened in Canadian civil service not that long ago, when the government published lists of people who were serving in the military, who were government workers, who were provincial workers, civil servants who were gay, and removed them from their jobs, obviously quite unceremoniously and traumatically. And so there were 3 new commissions, one for each of the festival choirs, that sang about the trauma and the recovery of the purge by the Canadian government of queer people working in the civil service. We won't listen to those. Those are pieces that I encourage you to go listen to. They'll be recorded and published later. But these pieces that we're listening to in a moment are other pieces that the 3 choirs sang as part of their larger repertoire. And it was a lovely 2-hour concert. And these are just little snippets of a couple pieces, but I hope you enjoy.
Ring the bells that still can ring, forget your perfect offering. There is a crack in everything. That's how the legacy. Thank you.
So thank you for joining us on this month's podcast from the Unison Song Festival here in Halifax, Nova Scotia, which is the quadrennial, I suppose, every 4 years, queer choir festival that happens. The next one will be in 4 years in Vancouver, BC, British Columbia, on the west coast of Canada. And I sincerely hope I get to go to that one as well. It's a lovely experience to see 1,500 queer people in one space, in one conference center, all singing, all there for one musical purpose. And it felt very safe and affirming and kind and wonderful. And it was such a lovely week. And I'm glad we got to chat with Deirdre, and I'm glad you got to listen to some of the pieces. But thank you for listening to the Classical Queer podcast, and we'll see you next month.
So that's all for this episode. You've been listening to the Classical Queer podcast, and Jake and I look forward to being with you next month. The incidental music is courtesy of Jared Miller, and the show was produced by Samantha Jane.